Hey everybody, we're in our last video of the 3 parts for the chapter challenge number 1, example scenario number 3. The first video of these 3 is I showed you how to do kind of preparing for the challenge. And then in the second one, we're looking at the supporting documents. And I did the data table the last time, and this last one is how to go about doing the graphing. So that's what this is all about right now. And all I've done so far is I opened a Google Sheet, which you might see here, and I actually copied and pasted my data table that I created in the actual Word document, or excuse me, the Google document. I just cut and pasted straight over. And all of these things then are the numbers here throughout that I had entered in from before. And I put up at the top up here these heading spaces: frame number, position, velocity, and acceleration. I just copied and pasted the whole thing in, making sure that I knew what to do with it. Everything right now is formatted to the center, but it really doesn't matter as long as I don't have units down below. If I have units down in these categories, we're in trouble. So your units need to stay up here in the titles. And we're going to be creating 3 different graphs. We're going to start out with frame number, and then position graph. So this is kind of a position time graph, but the frame number is going to be our time. And it's pretty easy to create once you have things set up looking like this. This is exactly the data table, again, that I created in the other Google Doc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to where A1 is. I'm going to click and I'm going to hold, and then I'm going to highlight down these 2 columns, and I'm going to let go right at the bottom. So I've got all the way down at the bottom. You'll notice that this cell right here has a darker bit, and that's frame number is on the left and position is on the right. And what I do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say insert, and I'm going to go down to the word chart. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, it might not show up at a chart like I have, and we'll have to select the correct one. But because I've been working with Google Sheets, it kind of memorizes what kind of chart I like to use. So I'm going to click on this one, and it's going to bring up a chart, and it's going to put it kind of right here. So there's my chart. This is my position versus, so I can move it. There it is. Position versus frame number. I do want to clean this up a little bit and make this happen so that I can put in some dots and see some pieces, but my position is over here on the left, which is what I want. My frame number is down here on the bottom, which is what I want. And it's drawn this piece, but do I have the correct type of chart? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say edit chart. Maybe I'll move it on top of my data table so we can see it for a moment. And I want to first check to see if it's the right kind of graph. And what it's come up with is line chart. Turns out that's not the kind of chart that I want. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to click on this one here, and I'm actually going to go down below, and I'm going to click on this word scatter. We're going to do a scatter plot. So if I click on scatter, it's going to look like this instead, which these are my data points as they work their way up. You'll notice that from frame 0 to frame 10, there's a bit of a curve to it. And then from frame 10 to frame 30, it's a straight line right after that. So that's what I've got. If I wanted to, I can customize this a little bit. Right now, frame number is on the X, which is what I want, and position is on the Y. That's what I want. And everything looks good so far. If I go to customize, I can do my chart styles. That's my choice of what kind of chart that I want. I can come down here to chart axis and titles, right? And I can change my chart title. If I don't like this chart title, I can change that to something else. So I could change that maybe instead of to position versus frame, I can say position time graph example scenario. Now I've got position time graph example scenario number 3. If I can spell position, that would be better. There it is. Everything else I'm going to leave. Series, I look at this and say, well, what do I do now? Do I need a trend line for this? And the answer is no. There's actually 2 different types of functions that are being represented here. I've got one that's a straight line function, and then I have another part that is exponential or curved here. So I'm going to leave this as is without a trend line. So we're not putting in a trend line on this. Do I need a legend? No, not really. Do I need a horizontal axis? I already have things labeled, so things feel pretty good. if I want to put this back into my original Google Doc, I can just go ahead and take this and I can copy it. Oh, it's not very nice there, but I have to highlight it and I can say edit, copy, and then I can go back to my Google Doc and I can paste it right in place. I don't know if I can switch tabs to do that here. I'll give it a try, and if it doesn't work, then so be it. So I'm going to try and switch tabs. Nope, not in this way. So we'll do the pasting in just a little bit. So here's the first one. I can also make this smaller if I want to kind of get it out of the way a little bit. So there's my, but then my title is too big. So keep in mind, you want to make sure everything fits in the right way. So position time. All right, my second graph, I want to have not position versus time, but I actually want it to be position in frame number, velocity versus frame number. So this is velocity versus time, keeping in mind that the time is the frame number. So how do I do that? Well, if I highlight here all the way to the bottom, I've now highlighted that one column. I'm going to use on the Windows side of things, I'm going to use a control click. I think it's also true on a Chromebook, and it would be a command click on a Mac. I'm going to hold on to that, and then I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and I'm going to put both of those in. Let's see what happens when I do these two. It might not be in the right category. We might have to change it. So I'm going to say Insert, Chart, and let's see if it did it right. Yes, it did. It put frame number on the bottom, which is what I wanted. It put velocity on the side, and it gave me a line chart again. So I'm going to come down here again to my scatter. And so now I have a chart here, and I can shrink this up a little bit. We could give it a new name if we want to. These units look fine. They're already included up here, and so they put them in just fine. I could give this a new title, and I could call this a velocity time graph. Example scenario number 3. Now, if things seem too compacted, right, and I want to get a little more space, I can do that, or I can fix that. But I'm going to leave it just like that for now. So I've got my velocity, and this, what's interesting about this is that you can see that there's this curve in the position graph at the same time that this graph is increasing. So when this graph is increasing, there's a curve in this graph. And when your velocity is constant up here at the top, unchanging, then this graph is no longer curved, but it does increase as things go. All right, let's put our third graph in here. And again, I could copy and paste this directly into my Google Doc when I'm ready. My third one is I want to do acceleration versus frame number. So I'm going to do it the same way I did before. I click and hold and drag all the way down here. And then I want to get to the acceleration. So I'm going to control click. So I'm going to hold the control button or command button up on a Mac. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, all the way here. Now I've highlighted those two columns. And I can say Insert, Chart. And on this case, I'm going to go over and say, yes, it's already put it into the scatter. It's starting to realize what I want. I can move this down here to get it kind of out of the way of my other bits. And I can make it a little bit smaller so that it seems to fit with the other ones. Of course, I can resize things when I get them in Google Drive or Google Docs as well. But let's make sure that I've got a title that I like. I'm going to come over here to Customize and go to Chart Titles. And I'm going to put in this acceleration. Maybe if I can type. Acceleration. Good. Acceleration time graph. We're still talking about scenario number 3 or example scenario number 3. I need to put example in there. Now, why is it running out of space here? Because my acceleration is a much longer word. I could also just kill time, I suppose, and say acceleration graph. I could do the same thing here. So this is a velocity graph. Come up here to the top. And I could call this a position graph. But nonetheless, let's take a look at this one. You'll notice that my acceleration is at 0.2. I've got my units here. That looks good. And then I've got my acceleration as 0 afterwards. And you'll notice that my increasing velocity happens when I have some sort of acceleration. And then my velocity stays the same when my acceleration goes away. My position keeps increasing, though, even though I have 0 acceleration. So here's my 3 graphs, and I'm going to copy and paste them over into my Google Doc. I can't show you this here because I can't switch from apparently tab to tab very easily. So I'm going to stop the video here, but I've got my 3 different graphs. They look out pretty good. I've got my data table I'm working on. I'm going to copy and paste over in my Google Doc, and I'm going to rock. So, all right, everybody. Hopefully this is helpful to you, and I will see you next time.